Hello there, welcome to Fridays at Noon. I'm Michael Chen, the executive producer and director for this talk show series. Fridays at Noon is a bi-weekly lunch and learn series that offers education on professional development topics to the University of Denver employees. For more information and to view past videos, please visit du.edu/HR and click on the People Development link. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the show.
And bring your lunch.
And bring your lunch.
Welcome to Fridays at Noon. My name is Ken Pinnock. I'm the Director of People Development, and today, very pleased to be meeting with Greg Geeson, our Manager of Employee Development, and notably, our architect of our new Learning and Development program known as the Colorado 14ers. So, welcome, Greg, and we're excited
Ken?
to be talking about this program.
Yeah, this will be great. Go ahead.
So you've been here at DU over a year, and you've kind of gotten a bit of the lay of the land. And what did you notice or pick up about the university, the culture, activities that got you thinking about this or prompting something like this?
Yeah, some observations that I had during that first year. One is there's a lot of professional development happening on this campus, but it's all widespread. And what I realize is it's not centralized. The left hand's not talking to the right hand. People aren't sure where it's coming from. People are promoting their own programs, but there's no effort to kind of bring it together. And what became evident to me was that we needed a champion or a champion group to kind of get people together to pull all of this into one, pot, so people could go to one centralized place. And the other thing I realized was that HR, at the time, I was a one person, in that area, that we could be doing a lot more if we had more support and more resources. And fast forward a year later, and now we've got a team of 3, and we've changed our name within HR called the People Development Team. And so all that is actually coming to fruition.
Now when you came and joined the university, you came right when a number of reports had been published dealing with the climate and needs on campus, and also there were engaging community task forces, and they were covering a number of topics from inclusive excellence, but one of them was professional development.
Yeah.
About that same time, our Chancellor Chop, was speaking very vocally about the need and the desire for more professional development, and how much of this that you're creating is feeding and aligning into those events and reports.
All of it, and that's part of the reason why I'm here is probably because of the change of some of that emphasis. And in all those reports, people were saying really the same thing. They wanted more professional development. They wanted some kind of centralized, pot where where they could find out what's going on and who's doing what, because it was so kind of scattered. People wanted opportunities for job growth, to improve themselves and their skill sets, and they wanted more of that. And also, to be honest, there was a clear request for management training, both for staff and faculty chairs. So those are the things that popped out of all those reports.
From what you just mentioned, who is this program for? Is there a defined audience, or what does that look like?
Well, it's for all employees of DU, so all faculty and staff are eligible to participate in any of these programs.
Okay. Well, so as we look at this, how does it work? Kind of walk us through this program.
All right, so kind of in a big picture perspective, so we took all the variety of professional development, not just classes, mind you, classes, opportunities, conferences, programs, online, on campus. We just took it all, and then by looking at it all, we then divided it up into pathways. And I should say that the reason we're calling it, the Colorado 14ers is because Colorado's known for its 14ers, and so it's really more of a theme, but then we thought we would play with the theme throughout. And so each pathway, and pathways are, leadership, supervisory level 1, supervisory level 2, inclusive excellence, sustainability, wellness, and on and on and on. Each pathway is associated with a particular Colorado 14er mountain.
I see.
And just to kind of tie it in together, right. and then in each pathway are all the classes that fall within those areas. And each pathway has a pathway guide, right? And so the idea is staff and faculty have two options. They can just take classes just for the fun of it, based on interest, with no worrying about if it's what pathway it's in or what that all means. They can just go purely on interest. Or people can actually get a certificate of completion in each pathway. Okay. And each pathway has anywhere from 12 to maybe 20 offerings, and a minimum requirement if you were going to try and do the certificate route of how many of those you had to take. But you always have options throughout the whole thing, even in each pathway.
So a couple things of note. One is it does align well with our culture of wellness and our well-being, wellness program. And also something you mentioned, it isn't just about classes. So it's not necessarily about someone being in a half-day or full-day program. Yeah. There's other ways to participate. Yeah. Can you just list a couple? Or
speaking? We have a lot of annual conferences here, so attending a conference or presenting at a conference, which is a separate thing you could do. Or it could be, we have lynda.com, right? So it could be taking a series of classes through Lynda. Or it could be a volunteer project or being a wellness champion. So it's very, very experiential in addition to the traditional, or online, on campus or online options.
And that goes very well with much of learning that happens in organizations is actually on the job. It's actually participating in the community.
And it's a holistic approach. And of course, everybody has different learning modalities, right? So we're hitting all cylinders because it's just a wide variety of options. So whatever works for you, you look for those kind of classes and that kind of learning method to take. And so you have those options.
A practical moment as well is how do you go about registering for this or for these programs?
Yeah, and because as you can see in this catalog, you can't see it on the video, but the classes are just listed by name or the programs or the activity. And then you go to our website, which is, du.edu, people development, one word. And we have a Colorado's 14ers section. And in there's also a list of all the classes, and all the descriptions. Like all the classes and opportunities that are in here are actually on our website. And the thing about registration, though, is because we're bringing together academic programs, professional programs, HR programs, on campus, lynda.com, we don't have a centralized registration system.
Because people will register for like the Diversity Summit through their program.
Yeah, exactly. And so it makes it a little bit challenging, but as we'll talk about later of how we kind of track what people have done, so we kind of leave the onus on them to kind of keep track of what they've done. So the majority of the classes are through Pioneer Web. You can probably sign up through there, but not all of them. So people kind of have to pay attention to where each class is originating from.
Are there any? You alluded to this, but is there any pros and cons about completing a inclusive pathway versus picking and choosing programs from different pathways?
Yeah, I think part of that comes down to your orientation. Like, why are you participating in this? If it's just to play around and experiment, then it doesn't really matter about the certification piece. If, however, you just happen to notice, let's say you're the personal growth, which is a pathway.
Yeah,
right. So that the classes that you're most interested in happen to fall in there, and you want to take a lot of them, well, then you might as well do the certification because you're already going to be on track, just for nothing else than to just do it because your interests are concentrated in a particular area. Another avenue, though, would be, let's say for professional development purposes, you want some kind of tangible evidence of what you did. Mm-hmm. Maybe for your resume, maybe for if you're applying for another job on campus, then it might make sense also to complete a pathway or two, get the certificate, and then you can just put that out there on your shingle, that I've also done this. So it just kind of varies on what people's intent is in being in the program.
So along those lines, can non-managers take management-oriented programs? Because, based on our community and what they're needing and wanting, there's a heavy emphasis on leadership and management.
Yeah, and our supervisory pathways, And yes, they can. Okay. In fact, that's really the whole point of this program is how can I further develop myself? And so I want to be a supervisor someday. And look, there's the whole track. And so here's an opportunity for me to start getting some of those skills. So, we highly encourage that, actually.
Oh, good. A program, this is a very comprehensive program. And with that, it's going to entail some impact and changes on culture, and perhaps what our community, what you've all thought about training in the past. And if I'm a manager, how can I get involved and encourage my staff? And likewise, if I'm a staff member, faculty member, how do I work with my manager or supervisor about that, about participating?
Well, let's take the manager first who wants to encourage his staff, because there's a few important things. One is, as you know, with our performance management system, you could cascade a professional development, goal where people can kind of create maybe their own, but that's one of the objectives. And that way it's on everybody's, performance management system.
Right.
So there's one way to do it. Another way would be to sit down with each employee and talk about professional development and with them kind of identify growth areas or areas where they want to, develop more of an expertise in, and then look in the catalog to find the classes that correspond with that and really encourage them to do it. Another one here's an important thing about a manager trying to really encourage people to do this is they need to walk the talk. And what I mean by that is, are they also taking advantage of the professional development, or are they just telling everybody else to do it?
Right.
That would send a mixed message. And then lastly, I would say it's critical for a manager, part of walking the talk is to support his or her staff in taking the time to do it. Because if they're not going to allow the time, then they're greatly restricting it. And then turning the tables. Now, how does let's say a staff member and their manager's not necessarily paying a lot of attention to this program, so how do they kind of get them to do that? And again, some of it would be the same thing by sitting down with their manager and identifying their growth areas and then saying, here's a couple places where I could work on that. Would you be willing to support me?
And that's important because we know that when we talk of career development, professional development, it's really individual driven. And we're wanting to create the culture and organization to support that, but really we all have to own our own development.
Yeah, so the employee might have to initiate that. And then the other thing I would say is help the manager understand how it not only benefits, let's say if I'm the employee, me, but how it benefits the department, which would then also benefit the manager. Okay. And, to make that equation, if they can't see it that way, they'll be like, okay, so it's a win-win, really, by allowing people to be able to do that.
And we certainly know that learning and development is tied closely to employee engagement, near and dear to my heart and many of you managers out there. So a couple other logistics, then I want to run some scenarios by you. So if I'm completing a pathway, how is that verified? What do I have to do? Is it complicated?
Yeah, the way it's partially the honor system. Because we want to make the employee responsible for their own development and tracking it. I mean, plus we don't have one unique registration system. So the way we're going to do it is there's a pathway completion form. And what that form is, it's on the website. So when you think you've completed the minimum amount, and I would encourage people to not look at it as a minimum amount. I would encourage people to take as many as they can in that area, and, not just try and skimp by. But it asks you to identify everything you took, what you learned, and how you might apply it. So you've got to take a little time and think that through. And then once they complete that, they meet with the pathway guide, just a quick face-to-face, and just kind of go over it to make sure that, because the pathway guide will be very familiar with their pathway.
Okay.
And that way, and that's really all it takes, and then they get, a certificate as a result of that.
So, we've added a lot of programs during this past year while you were initiating this development, this program as well. If I took classes last year, can they count if they're aligning with the different pathways?
Yeah, they certainly can. Now, if you were going to say, I think I took that 5 years ago, that's where you would sit down with the pathway guide, because in my case, if I was the pathway guide, I'd say, well, could you benefit, by taking it again, knowing that it's got new information and new material? It's not going to be a sticking point, but, there's that fine line. But yeah, you do get credit for things you've already taken.
Good. Okay, good. That's important, I think. So I think I just want to run a few scenarios by you. And these are common questions I receive in my role from supervisors and employees about learning and development and career. So if, for example, if I'm a staff member, I'm frustrated because it doesn't seem there's a career path for me or something ahead of me in my own department. I mean, how can this program help me in that regard?
And keep in mind, there's a lot of resources on campus, that could also help this particular employee. But if we're going to look just at this program, I would say the one thing is to, kind of like we've been talking about, is, all right, where do you see yourself heading, and what skills are going to be needed to get there? And would it be proactive for you to identify what those skills are, look where they are in the program, and create a pathway for yourself to start taking those, so you feel like you're doing something, you're building your resume, and when that job does open up, be it on campus or off campus, now you've got some momentum, and you're also demonstrating to whoever you would apply to, that you're a highly motivated individual, because you're not just sitting and stewing.
Right.
You're actually doing something about it by improving yourself. So that would probably be the coaching I would give them.
So, so as a supervisor, of an employee with lots of potential, but, I don't have the time. I mean, I wasn't, quote, hired to do that.
Yeah.
Or my job demands are such. I mean, how can this program help me and or that employee?
I mean, and really, if you think about it, this program is perfect for that scenario, because now you don't have to take the responsibility yourself, trying to think about what they need, what that would look like, where to send them. Now you've got it all right in this one container. You can give them a homework assignment of identifying some things, coming back, have a dialogue about it, and then create a little plan together. And then you're really doing the best thing you could do, because you're supporting them, you're giving them the time, the encouragement, and the opportunity to develop themselves, because you can't right off hand. So, yeah.
So then, let's say I'm a manager of a very disjointed team.
Yeah.
Everyone moving in different directions and no comment. How might this program help that? Maybe even to kind of try to get us all moving in similar
there's a lot of angles there. One would be for you as the manager.
You had to mention that.
You may want to look at a little coaching, one-on-one coaching, which, by the way, is in the booklet.
And no comment, please.
Yeah. Or you may want to look at some team building. So certainly there's that piece. Both of those, by the way, are in the program.
Right.
Depending what the reason is for the disjointedness, would probably dictate. Maybe some of them want some professional development. They don't feel like they feel stagnant. Who knows what that is? So that could be an avenue for them individually. But also we have a departmental pathway, which is a way for the whole department to come together and identify the areas that they want to grow and develop. And the way it's worded there is, if 75% of the department or the team or whatever does some of these things together, they get credit for it, and they can achieve a pathway which will also create a bonding and should take care of the disjointed piece.
And that's something, our group in people development could help if a department wanted to bring us in to get some ideas around using this for their own
exactly.
group.
Yeah.
So then, as an employee, I'm motivated, but I don't have time for classes. And you've alluded to this,
Yeah.
which I think is such a powerful aspect of this.
Yeah.
How can I use this program?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to sit in a class.
Yeah, and we have that here on campus. We have a lot of people that are in management positions that cannot find the time literally to go to any classes. And that was part of the incentive of bringing lynda.com in, which is connected to almost all the pathways. So you can get a lot of the work done through online learning with Lynda. We also have, as you know, programs like this, Fridays at Noon. We have a whole series of videos from the whole last year that are incorporated into here. So that's another online piece. There's also on our website, we've selected YouTube videos, most of them TED Talks, that are also strewn throughout in each program. So if you figured you took the Lynda, the Fridays at Noon, the YouTube, and then you saw whatever you had left, it might only be 2 or 3 classes left to complete a pathway.
That's good.
So that would give you an incentive to find a way to make that work.
That's good.
But we do believe it shouldn't all be online. It's really got to be a mixture.
The interaction.
Yeah.
And I think what is nice is leading a committee or leading a task force can count. So
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
So real world daily application can also apply to this program.
Yeah, and we have a mentor program, and that's in here. You can either be a mentor or be mentored. I mean, there's a lot of avenues, one-on-one coaching, that don't take up a whole lot of time, but you can still get that guidance that you need.
So you mentioned this is open for faculty and staff,
Yeah.
which I think is real important. And if I'm a chair of an academic department and there's a couple of faculty members who could benefit from some soft skills training,
Yeah.
can I utilize this program? How might I do that?
Yeah, and I think it's great for that scenario. Now, there's a couple things about that. One is, as you know, Ken, from our experience in training, that learning works better when the person getting the training wants it versus feels like it's put upon them, right? So that would be an issue to kind of talk out a little bit, where there would be an incentive for them to want to do that. Part of that might involve coaching of the faculty chair and how to present it, so it's an opportunity instead of a punishment or anything like that, of course. But for faculty members, it's also perfect because they have access to lynda.com as well. And so there's a lot of different avenues where they can, do the self-development, where if they don't have time to go to a class, they could still do it that way. So that would be something I would say. And the other thing that you're working on, separate of this program, and maybe you can say a couple words about it, is, the faculty chair training that is going to coincide with this, even though it's a separate thing.
Yeah, we are working on developing what that might look like for learning programs for chairs and for directors or heads of programs, academic programs. And, we're actually, we've gotten some good input from academic leadership and OTL, and we might approach it from a roundtable approach. It might not look exactly the same, but we want to be sure they know their resources as well that are unique for the different demands they have.
Yeah.
So, okay, are all these offerings free? I have to ask that.
No, they're not, and the greater majority of them are. But of course, if you're going to take Daniels College of Business Executive Ed program, it's either going to be tuition reimbursement or you're going to put out a few dollars. So there are, because we combined everything. Right. Some of them are for it's paid for the program, but the greater majority of them are services that the university is providing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, just a couple more while we have you here on this. What are some of the new classes coming out from people development, and what's new?
Well,
in addition to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting because for most people everything's new because they haven't seen it all before. But I'm just going to highlight a few. And again, there's a lot, but these are all new. Like one of them, magnetic networking workshop. So it's for people how to network and to really meet other people across, the universities, so that they can kind of develop, colleagues all over campus. And should they want to, apply for jobs across anywhere around, they'll know about them, they'll know people. It's just to get people to mix more. Okay. There's one called Appreciative Inquiry, which is, new for us. And that's done by our chaplain. There's presentation skills, which we've never really offered for faculty and staff. It's offered for students. We're going to be doing that. We've got bullies and browbeaters, reframing intimidation class with one of our Daniels professors. So it's bullying in the workplace, how to work with that. Business writing skills. We've got a class on effective meeting facilitation. We've got improved workplace morale with one of our most popular teachers in Daniels School of Business. Supervisory skills 1 and 2. We've had mini versions. Now we've got a full blown out program. So that's just the tip of the iceberg.
So
there's a lot to be excited about.
It really is. And we're going to have ways to get this out. We'll talk about in a moment, but this sounds novel to me in a university setting. What do you know about that?
Yeah, well, it's very novel. In fact, it's so novel that we've already been asked to present at a national conference, and we haven't. And the program's just rolling out now. So that says a lot right there.
Good interest.
Because of how it combines everything, in the way it does. The other thing, too, is, probably a year ago, I would say, when I first started here, we were probably behind the 8 ball, that most of the schools were a little ahead of us in professional development. And, and typically on college campuses, it's, to be honest, it's comes out of the HR department, and it's one person that's got HR duties and, by the way, do professional development on top of that.
Right.
And so they just do their best to kind of get as much out there as they can. Now we're talking about the complete opposite, because this program really launches us as a leader in the field because of what we're doing and what we're putting together. So just in 1 year, we've come a long way.
Well, where do people get more information about this?
Of course, our website, which is du.edu/people development, and then we have a professional development tab, which is where all the information on the 14ers is. The other thing I would say, too, is if it feels overwhelming at all to anybody, which it could, some of the things to do, one would be to get a coaching session with one of us and just sit down, let's talk it out.
Right.
That way, it's probably the most personalized way, because this is really a personalized program, because it's based on what I need or what they need, and that's how it works best. And so that would be the first thing we'd recommend, and then maybe sitting down with their supervisor after that and crafting their own plan.
Well, DU, you asked for it and we listened, and this is the 14er program. The lead developer and the brainstorm came from Greg Geeson, our employee development manager. Thank you for coming today, and we're excited about this.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and stay in touch.